All right, the first thing we're going to cover today is going to be what knives we're going to be using, and then we'll get to our production. All right, so let's talk about what knives are on the table and what their basic uses are. We'll start off with these three. These are all three boning knives. This one is similar to the knife that you have in your kit. It's a 6-inch stiff boning knife. Then I have a couple of different flexible knives. This is a 6-inch flexi, very good for meat cutting, angling around bones, and being able to flatten out. It increases its surface area. Then we have here a 5-inch shorter boning knife, very good for angling around different bone structures as well. This is the knife that I use primarily in this class, so it's very comfortable. Then I have a couple of different scimitars. Scimitars would be used for making larger, smoother cuts where you're trimming large roasts, making some cutlets, portion cutting steaks, those kind of things. This shorter one just is a little more nimble, a little bit easier to use. And then you could also, of course, use the basic chef knife. That will enable you to cut portions, cut steaks, cut roasts, whatever you need to do. Cutting stew works very well with this knife. It has a very broad area, which means that you're going to have a fair amount of suction on the knife, where these are a little bit thinner, so meat doesn't stick quite as much, so it makes them a little bit quicker. Let's talk a little bit about what I'm going to do as far as knife sharpening. Let's sharpen up a knife so you get the basic idea. Throughout the week I want to make sure that you're keeping your knives sharp, and I'll show you the basic technique. What I have here is an oil stone. It's a two-sided stone. This side is quite coarse, this side is a bit finer. You would start off on the coarse side if your knife is fairly dull and needs to really shape the edge. I'll set it on a moistened towel, that way it doesn't move around, hopefully. And we have a little bit of a mineral oil or honing oil that I'll spray on there. Smooth it out. And we'll start off with the same knife that you have, a 6-inch stiff boning knife. I would press the knife flat against the edge of the stone, right up here by the bolster, and then swipe it at about a 20-degree angle. All right, you can see a little bit of a shadow on the back, and I'll place my 2 fingers on it and drag the knife over the whole stone, turn it over, push the knife through the whole stone. So it's a series of drag, push, pull, push, nice smooth motion, using the whole stone and the whole knife. Make sure that you don't raise your hand up as you finish. That's a typical mistake. That kind of dulls the tip, and the tip is going to be crucial when you're doing your meat cutting. A lot of meat cutting is dependent just on the tip. So a few strokes back and forth on this side keeps things nice and smooth. I'm checking the edge. What I'm checking for is any burrs. If I over sharpen one side as opposed to the other, I'm going to create a burr or an unevenness to the knife's edge. If one side feels a little bit rougher, go back and re-establish that side, that edge. And then again. Once you've established your edge again, then turn it over, and then go with the fine side. Again, oil. And then nice and smooth. You can hear the difference. I'm applying a certain amount of pressure. You don't want to go too light. You're not just swiping the knife over the stone like so. You want to apply a little bit of pressure, as though you're carving a thin slice of the stone off. And once you've established your edge, clean off the knife. I'm going to use just a little bit of roll towel. And also clean off the stone, because you want to take off any of the residue that's on the stone. See the gray? That's all metal flake that's come off the knife. So you want to keep the stone nice and clean. If you're using a water stone, rinse it, right? Rinse it really well when you're done. You don't want the stone impregnated with metal flakes. And then finally, we'll steel the knife just to clean up any burrs or little edges that might be left over on the edge. Steeling the knife brings the knife back to life, so to speak, when you're done. Hold it up straight, start on the tip, and just work your knife down along both sides. Nice and even, nice and smooth. Doesn't have to be done real fast. 8-10 strokes is enough. You'll see as you get used to it, you can go faster. What you want to avoid is going away from yourself like this. This could be a dangerous move in that, you know, you're flaring the knife out into the public. All right, nice and smooth. Check the edge. And that's it. You should be ready to cut.
Proper sanitation is essential. For short-term cleanup, use a sanitizing cloth to wipe down the surface. Clean your work surface after each use. When switching from meat, fish, or poultry, always wash your cutting surface thoroughly. Your knives should be wiped often and cleaned when starting a new task. Be sure to check your local sanitation codes. It is advisable to wear gloves when working with food that will not be cooked after handling. Treat your knives with respect.
The do's and don'ts of knife care.
Don't use a dull knife to cut your product.
A sharp knife uses less force. Sharpen and steel when needed.
Don't grab just any knife for the job.
With the right knife, efficiency rules.
Don't sharpen on anything that's not intended for that purpose.
Using the proper stone and steel prolongs the life of your knife.
Don't lose focus on what you're cutting.
Loss of concentration can lead to unwanted accidents.
Whoa, that's gonna leave a mark. Don't use your knife on anything but food.
They're the tools of your trade. Treat them with respect.
Don't walk with your knife waving in the breeze.
Always walk with the knife at your side, tip pointing down.
Don't expose your knife's edge to an inappropriate surface.
Constant abuse will lessen the life of your knife.
Don't hone your knife just anywhere.
Turn away from your work area and wipe your knife when complete.
Don't reach for a knife anywhere you can't see it.
Immediately clean and sanitize your knife.
Don't pass off your knife carelessly.
Pass the knife handle first or place it down for pickup.
Don't try to catch a falling knife.
Do I need to elaborate on this subject?
Now that's a sharp knife.
Don't move abruptly when holding a knife.
Always be aware of your surroundings and use common sense.
Don't cut on just any surface.
A moistened towel under your sanitized butcher block will do the trick.
Don't run a finger or other body part lengthwise to check for dullness.
Gently rub your finger across the blade to check for sharpness.
Those were the do's and don'ts of knife care.
Got it? Good. Cut.
There are many types of culinary knives available to the chef. Some generic, and some very specialized. The most commonly used knife is the chef's knife. This is an all-purpose knife, usually 8 to 10 inches long, though you can get them up to 14 inches long. The blade, on average, is 1.5 to 2 inches wide at the heel and tapers to a point. It's probably the most used knife and is known for its versatility: paring, trimming, peeling, chopping, slicing, dicing, julienne, pounding, butterflying, crushing. The smaller version of the chef's knife is its little cousin, the utility knife. The paring knife is smaller, usually 4 to 6 inches, usually reserved for fine cutting. Its smaller size can get into tight places and also allows fine control of the blade and tip. The fillet knife is commonly used in the fabrication of fish, meat, and poultry. Its flexibility and thin blade are its main assets. It is usually 6 to 8 inches in length. The composition of the blade and its thickness determine its flexibility. The boning knife is very similar to the fillet knife, but is much more rigid. Often, it's used on larger cuts of meat or large bony fish. Its strength and ability to get into tight places are what keeps it on the list of common knives. The slicer is known for its long, consistent cutting blade, accommodating a smooth slice in a single stroke. Its blade is the same thickness from just after the blade to the spline. This kind is often used for breads, large roasts, and the like. Some slicers have beveled edges, some with scalloped edges, some have indents to assist in releasing the sliced item. Common names include meat slicer, salmon slicer, and bread slicer. There are slicers that are similar to a chef's knife, but with a thinner, longer, more tapered blade. Cleavers have a large rectangular blade and commonly have a single-sided edge. While Western-style knives have 2 beveled sides, Asian-style blades found on sushi knives have 1 beveled side and 1 straight. There are specialized knives reserved for certain tasks, such as the tourne knife, clam knife, and others. Knives with serrated or scalloped edges are best sent back to the factory for reconditioning. Most straight-edge knives can be maintained on your own. There are also many other sharp cutting tools in the kitchen, like the peeler, zester, apple corer, the mandolin, and the Japanese slicer. Since many of these tools have very specialized purposes, they also need factory-maintained sharp edges. We will stick with the most commonly used knives.